Well, good morning. Thanks for joining me today. As a reminder, as you think about it today, just be praying for us, the elders, and Michael and I as we meet tonight and discuss opening. We're looking forward to hopefully meeting together this Sunday. And so just be in prayer for us today as we talk through what that would look like and we make wise choices for our congregation and for our church body health, and just as we're wrestle with how best to prevent the spread of the coronavirus, but also to be able to gather together. So we would appreciate and covet your prayers as we process and think through tonight. So our reading today was in Acts 3, and so I'm going to read verses 11 through 16 as we begin. While he clung to Peter and John, all the people, utterly astounded, ran together to them in the portico called Solomon's. And when Peter saw it, he addressed the people. Men of Israel, why do you wonder at this, or why do you stare at us as though by our own power or piety we have made him walk? The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, the God of our fathers, glorified his servant Jesus, whom you delivered over and denied in the presence of Pilate, when he had decided to release him. But you denied the holy and righteous one, and asked for a murderer to be granted to you. And you killed the author of life, whom God raised from the dead. To this we are witnesses. And his name, by faith in his name, has made this man strong whom you see and know. And the faith that is through Jesus has given the man this perfect health in the presence of you all. So this is in response to Peter and John healing a lame beggar, and then everyone wants to know how that happened. They're astounded, and they come and gather, and they want to know about it. And so Peter gives this sermon here. And so I think about it in my own life when I'm given credit for something that I do, whether people say, good job on your sermon, or people appreciate something that I do, I usually just pass it off real quickly, right? Like thanks, or I don't know, just something small. Or if it wasn't even me, I'll just be like, oh, it was Lindsay. She did that instead. And yet Peter doesn't do that here. He doesn't just say, oh, it wasn't me, it was Jesus. Like he doesn't just pass it off real quickly. In fact, I think we see three things here that Peter highlights. Besides the fact that he puts a lot of responsibility on them for crucifying Jesus, he actually highlights three things about Jesus. And so the first, in verse 12 there, he says it's not on our own power, right? He said, as though by our own power we have made him walk, right? He's recognizing it wasn't us. We didn't do this. You come and gawk at us like we did it, but it wasn't by our own power. We see clear humility here from Peter. He knew it wasn't about them. And I think often in our own lives, this is an area that we fail, that we like to get recognition when we do things well. We like to be noticed. We like to be appreciated. And that's good. There's value, but glory should go to God. And that's what Peter recognized right here. He didn't take credit for himself at all. He said, don't gawk at us like we did this. It was not about us. This is God. He did this. This is God's glory. The second thing we see in verse 14 is Jesus presented as holy and righteous, which when you think about it is in stark contrast to how the Pharisees saw themselves, right? They saw themselves as holy and righteous, and yet they were completely far from that. And that was the standard in their day. So these people who crucified Jesus and are now wondering about Peter and John, how they healed this man, they're used to thinking that they've got to work to look good. They've got to earn their righteousness. They've got to keep all these laws to be holy and righteous. And yet the man that they put on the cross that they thought was a false teacher or false prophet or whatever, that he was claiming to be God because he was God, right? He actually was holy and righteous. And also, it says here, in stark contrast to the murderer that they released, right? The farthest thing from holy and righteous. And so Jesus was the only perfect one, and only he can make us whole. Only he could make the beggar whole. And then finally in verse 15, we see the third thing, which is Jesus as the author of life. What a profound choice of words. I just really enjoy that. And in this case, we see physical life, right? God gave us physical life. Jesus gave us our lives that we have, that we live and breathe. He gave the lame beggar there the physical life that he has. So only Jesus has the right to heal him. And yet it goes beyond that, because now because of Jesus, He's also responsible for our spiritual life. When we give our lives to Jesus, we now have turned our hearts over to him, and we are made right before God, and so we can spend eternity with him. So he's responsible for our spiritual life. He is the author of life. We haven't given life to anything. I do not even give life to my dog. I didn't give life to my children. It may have come through my body and through my wife's body, but God gave life, breathed life into our child, and we know that from Scripture. We created nothing, and so only Jesus can speak into the lame man's life. Only he can heal what's created. And so all of this, of course, points to, in verse 16, points to Jesus. Right? That's what he says. We are witnesses, and it's by his name that made this man strong, right? That he gives this man the perfect health. So all of this is to give credit to Jesus. What I love is that Peter takes this opportunity in where God uses Peter and John to heal a lame beggar, and then Peter takes advantage of that opportunity to share the gospel. Right? That's what I see him doing here. He says, look, it's not about us. It's not our power. It's God's glory. It's about Jesus, whom you crucified, but Jesus was holy and righteous, not the way that you think that you have to live to earn it. And Jesus is the author of life. He's the one who made you. He's the one who made the beggar, the lame beggar that he healed, that they healed. Right? Jesus made each and every one of us, and now he also gives us spiritual life. And so where we often will quickly pass things off or we'll take credit for ourselves, what we see Peter and John doing here is a great example of humility and recognizing where their true source of power comes from, and that's from God alone. And so they give Jesus credit, and they give a gospel message, like you need to know him. By his name, he made this man strong and gave this man perfect health in the presence of you all. So only Jesus, right? That's kind of what I'm at today. Only Jesus. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you all on Sunday. Thanks. God bless.